The first part of this question is asking us to determine the equilibrium in a monopoly market. The fact that it says illustrate means that we have to provide a diagram. If our diagram is accurate, we will need to add barely any text in order to explain how price and quantity are determined. We can see that only 5 marks are available, so we must do this quickly. So when we're drawing all of the market types, we need to remind ourselves of the central condition. Marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost is the stable point or equilibrium for all market types. So this will work in perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. Monopoly is consistent with a steep downward sloping demand curve. Remember, the strict definition of monopoly is a market with just one provider. The marginal revenue curve slopes down more steeply than the demand curve because each time we expand output, we must cut the price of the current and all previous units. So the marginal revenue from expansion decreases at a more rapid rate as quantity expands. Our marginal cost function looks a bit like an uptick. So we get the initial benefits of specialisation as the unit costs drop, and then we see a rapid increase in unit costs as production is expanded. So the key thing that we're looking at is for this intersection of marginal cost and marginal revenue. And if we take that equilibrium position down, then we can see the optimal quantity of output for this monopolist. So the intersection of marginal cost and marginal revenue gives us the optimal quantity, but we have to take this up to the demand curve to identify the equilibrium price that the monopolist is going to charge. So we take our equilibrium up, intersect with the demand curve, and move horizontally to the price axis. So this is the price, this is the quantity, and this is the equilibrium position. Only 5 marks are available, and we're not asked to represent costs or to display the amount of profit that's available. So we can stop here and not add in the cost function and information about profits. So use the time wisely and don't go beyond what you need to answer the question. The second part of question B is asking us about the UK letter delivery market, which essentially remains a monopoly. It asks us about benefits and drawbacks associated with monopoly existence. So this is a conceptual question which doesn't necessarily need to have any diagrams. So there are different ways that we can approach this. Remember, we've only got 12 minutes in the format of the course to answer this question. So we can begin with a table that talks about pluses and minuses of a monopoly in the postal market. Alternatively, we can think about this from the perspective of different stakeholders. So we could talk about the impact on relevant stakeholders who might be customers. Depending on the industry, we might consider suppliers. Obviously that's more relevant if we're looking at the case of supermarkets or perhaps manufacturers. We would talk about the experience of employees. Obviously, shareholders would be a group which benefited very significantly from monopoly dominance of an industry. We could talk about government. It might be that government taxes are affected by the market structure, and let's think about that other. We might think about the impact of monopoly structure on potential rivals, so firms that were interested in entering this industry in order to capture some of the positive economic profit. So if we're thinking about the benefits of monopoly in the mail market, then the first thing is that we can have positive profit. So this is profit in the economic sense. So we're going beyond unit costs, we're going beyond the opportunity costs of the resources used, and we're making positive profit. This of course has a benefit for shareholders who are going to gain from the profit, but potentially the employees could benefit from this economic profit in the form of higher wages than would be available elsewhere for comparable skill level jobs. One of the benefits from monopoly dominance can be that the existence of positive economic profits allows a greater spending on research and development and innovation. If we look at a significant player like Amazon, who were featured in the Guardian newspaper over the last couple of days in terms of their dominance across a whole range of different industries beyond the retail sector, which we primarily identify with Amazon, we can see that having this economic profit and this market dominance enables them to perpetuate their strength and dominance. So if they're long-sighted, they will invest in research and development and innovation in order to secure their position. This is definitely something that we associate with organisations like Amazon. But it could be the case even in an industry like Royal Mail that positive economic profits allow them to automate the process, allow them to introduce new complementary products. Another significant benefit will be that a monopolistic organisation is much more likely to be able to exploit all of its economies of scale. So if we think about the long run average cost curve, there can be certain industries in which you need to be a sole or one of two or three organisations providing that good or service to enable you to reach constant returns to scale, or what we described as minimum efficient scale in certain diagrams. So if there are a huge number of players in the mail delivery business, then we think about the inefficiencies that would bring. Each of them would need a very significant logistical setup in terms of warehouses for sorting out the mail, would need access to trains and lorries to distribute it across the country to regional offices, where it would then be divided up into individual mail delivery officers' bags. So this is a very significant investment in terms of infrastructure, and to do this across a very large number of firms would be very inefficient and expensive. Typically, when we think about the drawbacks of a monopoly, we say that there's a lack of consumer choice, so there's a big impact on welfare for consumers. We expect there to be higher prices than if the market were competitive, as the lack of competition can allow firms to make monopoly profits, which are enjoyed by the shareholders, obviously, which benefit the shareholders but obviously have a negative impact on the consumer. The fact that there's no competition might actually, the opposite of our point over here, mean that there's a lack of innovation. There's no spur to increased efficiency because there's no threat from rivals. At this point, it's a good opportunity to mention the work of Schumpeter, who we looked at in the lecture, and there's also a very short extract from Schumpeter on the Moodle page, who talks about the fact that even though a monopoly is dominant in their industry, there's a continual pressure of what he describes as creative destruction, which means they have to continually innovate and improve their delivery in order to prevent the entry of rivals. And that would form a good starting point for the answer to question 4b.